a guy like Joe Burrow jumping on various shows, talking about how he wants to keep guys together and all this kind of stuff like that. I think it's a really cool thing, right? Because I think that it's the one off season where you can't be like, well, you're just relying strictly on outside media. You're getting pressure legitimately from your leader. Joe
Mm.
Burrow, I think he realized this now. You think about it. Hey, I have more power than I realize, right? It's not like it's the Palmer days and all that kind of stuff like that. You actually did take this team to a Super Bowl with a lackluster offensive line. This is will say that if I can compare the Joe Burrow impact to any player in the sports world, I hope I'm not selling him short here when I say this, but I think his impact in Cincinnati and Ohio is very similar to what Luka's might have been with Dallas Mavericks or was with the Dallas Mavericks, right? So they wanted to see the Mavericks organization do right by Luka Doncic, right? And I think that Bengals fans alike are wanting to see the Bengals organization do right by Joe Burrow, and they're saying, hey, you know what? Joe speaking out, right? And you felt like it was this weird cluster where people felt like they couldn't criticize or say what they wanted to say. But when Joe Burrow said it, everybody speaks out in droves now. And now you got guys like Trey Hendrickson, who talked about the communication aspect or the lack of it, if you will, on the Pat McAfee show, and how he came to hear from Duke Tobin's comments made at the Senior Bowl. It's one of those things where it's not like it's the early 2000s anymore, the mid 2000s anymore. Social media is very alive and well, right? There are so many different shows out there. Guys have to answer some tough questions at times, and the organization is going to be hit with some of those tough questions. If you got Joe Burrow doing a media tour, and I'll be honest with you, seeing the guy walking around Radio Row, he looked miserable doing it. If you've heard the stories about Joe Burrow hating media, all that stuff is real. The fact of the matter is, Joe Burrow's coming out saying, hey, we need to keep these guys. Hey, we need to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to make sure we keep our star players. And I think that there's something to be said about the Bengals keeping players that actually want to be here. Hearing Trey Hendrickson come out and say, hey, I want to help Cincinnati win a championship, whether that means you trade me and you get draft capital or we agree to an extension. I want to see Cincinnati win a championship. Those are guys that you want to see here. Like Jesse Bates was one of those guys, right? Obviously, you couldn't work with his agent Dave Mulgeta because it was just a rough negotiation all around, and burnt bridges might have happened there. But when you look at it, man, it really comes down to the Bengals got to do a better job of making sure that they keep the players that want to be here in stripes. Not only that, but the players that are actually performing at a high level. And I think that's the conversation. I think that's what couldn't get lost in some things.
The internal pressure is all that's left. You've gotten rid of everybody else, right?
Yeah.
There's no one else left to blame if things don't work out, because it's clearly not Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, right? It's
Yeah.
clearly not Trey Hendrickson, right?
Yeah.
So that there's only the coaching staff and the front office, and you can't blame the coaching staff necessarily for all the draft misses. Yeah, there's been struggles to develop talent, but there's also been some poor draft picks along the way, and I don't think the coaching staff owns all of that responsibility. I think that there needs to be some serious changes to coaching staff and front office, particularly with approach and evaluation and also valuation. Not just how good is somebody, but how do we value these positions in the modern NFL?